So welcome to my YouTube channel. That's what we call The Good Life. Today I'm going to be showing you and telling you about planting garlic and the different types and what to expect when it's growing. So if you've not already subscribed to my channel, if you could please do so, because you'll get lots of helpful hints and tips all throughout the year from the allotment, my home garden, and from time to time my home kitchen. Now first of all, there's two types of garlic. There's soft neck and hard neck. Now both of them in the UK are perfectly okay to plant in the autumn, and it's October here in the UK, so that's when I'm going to be planting mine, but they are different and you have to choose what's right for you. Now the hard neck variety is different in the fact that it actually has a hard neck going through the middle and a soft neck doesn't. So this is a soft neck variety and there's no thick stem going through the middle. A hard neck produces less cloves, but it produces larger ones, but they don't store as well. So you've got to bear that in mind when you go for the hard neck variety. But although they produce a larger clove, they don't store as well. Whereas a soft neck variety doesn't have a hard stem going through the middle. It produces more cloves. They are smaller, but they do last a lot longer. So that's the two things to bear in mind with that. The other difference between a hard neck and a soft neck is a hard neck produces a scape and it changes colour when it's ready to harvest, and you can also harvest the scape if you want to, whereas a soft neck doesn't, and when it's ready to lift it just flops over, a bit like an onion. So that's the distinct difference in the two varieties, and you've got to choose what's right for you, whether you want large cloves, whether you want it to store longer, you know, what's most important for you. I've chosen a soft neck variety and it's called, if I can pronounce this, Garcua, G-A-R-C-U-A. And like I say, it is a soft neck variety. It's strong flavour and good for storing, and it can be sown in either the autumn or the spring. I always sow mine in the autumn. So one of the reasons you sow it in the autumn is that the cold weather really helps the bulbs split and to produce, you know, because obviously when you sow them, you just pop one clove in of garlic and then that will produce a whole bulb. And the cold, frosty weather, what that does is that helps the bulb concentrate its efforts into the bulb to produce the bulb and to help it split. That's why it's really important to get them in, I think, in October. And I think as a result of putting them in October, although you can put them in over the next 3 months, you get a much better clove at the end of the day. The other controversy that we all talk about is now, what do we plant? Do we plant the ones that we grew last year? Do we buy bulbs from a garden centre? Or do we go rogue and try and do a supermarket variety? Now, I know that lots of people have done all three and had successes. Now, with growing the ones from last year's variety, that's a really good idea to do that if you've got any left over, because they're used to your soil. Now, I'm not doing it this year because my garlic harvest last year was absolutely appalling and they weren't great at all, and I'm not confident putting them back in the ground again. So I've bought some from a garden centre, which is this variety. And the reason you use a garden centre is because they've all been treated, they've all been certified, so they should grow really well. That being said, my ones last year came from a garden centre and they didn't do very well. I might add, I've bought them from a different garden centre this year. I've tried Dobby's, so we'll see. And I'm going to try also a supermarket variety, which I know a lot of people, some people say, oh no, it's a massive no-no. Yet I read some blogs and I watch some videos where people have done really, really well. One of the things they said is make sure you get one that's more like your climate, so I've chosen a Spanish variety and we will see. It's a single clove. I'm going to try a few and I'm going to see what happens, and you can watch my journey to see which ones do better, but I'm interested just to see how they do. Apart from anything else, the price of the garlic in the garden centres is really quite expensive now, and to buy a bulb from a supermarket was only costing me 60p, and some people literally swear by it and that's all they ever do. So I'm just a little bit curious and I'm going to have an experiment. So let's get on and crack in and let's start planting it in the ground, and I'll show you how I plant my garlic. Now you can plant it in module trays if you want to, if your soil is very compacted and a bit clayey. Although mine's clayey, it's not too bad, it's fine. So I personally just sow mine direct into the ground. If you plant them in module trays, you just poke them just below the soil level, and then you can sink them down deeper when you plant them out. But today I'm going to show you the method of showing them straight into the ground. And I think most people know that follow me, I prefer the no faff gardening. So if I can get away with sowing something straight into the ground rather than starting it off in the module tray. Plus the fact I want the cold weather to hit these as well. Like I said, the cold weather is really important in helping the bulb split as well. I will show you how I do it. So let's get these down in the ground. I'm obviously going to plant those ones separately so I know which is which. Get some gloves on. Right, let's get down and let's start planting. Now I've already dug this ground over and I've raked it over. It was really quite soft, so I was quite pleased with that, and I thought that it would be a lot easier to put them in the ground. Now some people dig a little tiny trench across the middle. I, on the other hand, I just use a dibber because I find that works perfectly okay. It's a lot easier, let's get rid of that snail. It's a lot easier, I think, than digging a hole, little trail there. Let's get rid of those lovely big stones. We don't want those in the way. So whenever you're planting seeds or anything like that, if you've got any big stones in the way, just lift them out the way like that. So let's get one of these bulbs and split them up. So like I say, you just split them up like that. So they're separate. I mean, even though they say they're not so big, this softnet variety, gosh, these bulbs are absolutely gigantic. We've got one manky one there which we'll discard. So break them all up. So when I looked up the instructions, it said do the rows about 15 centimetres apart, and you can plant your bulbs about 10 centimetres apart. So the depth that you go down is, let's say, an inch, so it's about the depth of the bulb. So you've got the bulb in the ground with an equal amount of soil on the top, give or take. So you're putting it down the depth of the bulb. So you've got the bulb, you'll have soil on the top. So let me just show you what I mean, because it's often a lot easier to show people what you mean rather than just talking. So just if you've dibbered the hole too big like I've done, then just put a bit more soil in. So obviously with that bit facing down and the pointy bit facing up, I know it's really obvious, but if you've never gardened before, I've known people put them in upside down before, both these kinds of bulbs, onions. So just like that, so you've got about the depth of the bulb above it, and then obviously we will cover those in. So you want about 10 centimetres. I must admit my measurements probably aren't perfect. So pop the dibber in. Like I said, if you've not got a dibber and you want to just do a trail them in, you can trail them in. It's completely up to you. Again, same thing. We're just taking off the outer bits and just pop them straight in. So it's super, super easy. I dug this over yesterday. One top tip I will say, it's often worth digging the ground over like the day before or a couple of days before, because it's quite tiring to dig it over and then put it in all in the same day. You know, pace yourself a little bit. So I came up yesterday and dug this over. I finished raking it over this morning, ready to pop them in the ground. So there we are, we just pop them in the ground like that, ever so simple. So that's all my garlic in the ground. All we need to do now is just gently rake them over and just leave them in there. I don't need to water them because it rains plenty this time of year in the UK. So that's one thing we don't have to worry about with due more showers today. So all I need to do is also keep them weed free. So you just cover them over, keep them weed free. One thing I will say, I've mentioned it before in some of my videos, I actually get discount in Dobbies and various other places like M&S and Homebase and Argos and lots of other places where you can get garden stuff and lots of other essentials. If you want some information on how you can get this discount card, it's called a cashback card. There will be a link up on the screen. You can either sign up for it yourself by taking at least one service and then taking the cashback card, or you can send us a message and one of us can have a quick chat with you over the phone. Now I hope you've enjoyed this video and it's going to inspire you to get some garlic planted. I'd love to hear if you've got any garlic planted already and what varieties are your favourite, whether you're prepared to go rogue like me and pop some supermarket ones, or whether you use your own from the year before, or whether you play it safe and go to a garden centre.